The warning lights on the communications console flashed red across every screen in the Galactic Council chamber. Emergency frequencies crackled to life, and a desperate voice filled the vast hall. "This is Velrani Colony 7. We need immediate assistance. Solar flare has destroyed our atmospheric processors. 340,000 civilians. 2 weeks of breathable air remaining. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help." The message repeated 3 times before cutting to static. The council chamber, a massive dome structure floating in neutral space, fell silent. Representatives from 40 different species sat in their designated sections, their various forms of biology all sharing one common expression: concern mixed with careful calculation. Ambassador Hana sat in the human section, a small platform near the back. Humans had only joined the Galactic Council 30 years ago. They were still newcomers, still learning the proper ways of conducting interstellar politics. She leaned forward, her hands gripping the edge of her console. Captain Tay stood beside her. His ship, the Horizon's Promise, was docked at the council station for routine trade negotiations. He was a tall man with kind eyes and graying hair at his temples. "That's a lot of people," he whispered to Hana. "2 weeks," Hana replied quietly. "They have 2 weeks." The council chair, a being named Oralvex from the Thessian species, called the chamber to order. The Thessians were an old race, dignified and proud. They had helped write the laws that governed galactic civilization. Oralvex's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he addressed the assembly. "The emergency transmission has been verified," Oralvex announced. "The Velrani Colony 7 situation is critical. We must organize an appropriate response." The word appropriate hung in the air. Hana had been in enough council meetings to know what it meant. The response would be measured, calculated, based on political value and resource allocation. A representative from the Korthan Empire spoke first. "The Velrani are not a council member species. They have limited trade agreements. I propose a standard relief package: 12 ships, basic supplies, evacuation capacity for 50,000. 50,000? Hana spoke before she could stop herself. All eyes turned to her section. "There are 340,000 people there." Oralvex's upper eyes focused on her. "Ambassador Hana, the Korthan proposal is generous. 50,000 represents the priority personnel: scientists, skilled workers, government officials. The rest will be unfortunate." "Unfortunate?" Hana's voice rose. "You mean dead? You're going to let nearly 300,000 people die?" A murmur ran through the chamber. The Thessian chair's translator crackled with what might have been a sigh. "Ambassador, you must understand. The Velrani colony is located in a difficult sector. The journey takes 18 days for our fastest convoy. Resources are limited. We must make practical decisions." 18 days? They have 14 days of air. "Which is why we focus on saving those we can save," another representative interjected. This one was from the Mindari Collective, a species known for their logical approach to everything. 50,000 lives preserved is better than a failed attempt to save all. Hana looked around the chamber. Faces that were not human, biology that was completely alien. But she could read their expressions well enough. They had already decided. This was just the formal process. The Velrani colonists were not important enough for a major effort. She stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "I request permission to contact Earth." Oralvex waved a dismissive appendage. "You may observe council proceedings, but Earth has no substantial fleet in this sector. Your input, while noted, is not relevant to this matter." Hana felt Tay's hand on her shoulder. He shook his head slightly. Fighting here would accomplish nothing. She sat down, her jaw tight, and pulled out her personal communicator. The message to Earth was brief. "Velrani Colony 7. 340,000 civilians. Atmospheric failure. 14 days. Council sending 12 ships in 18 days. Will save 50,000 max." The response came back in less than 2 minutes. Admiral Sung's text appeared on her screen. "How many ships do we have in jump range?" Hana's fingers flew across her console, pulling up fleet positions. She sent back the data. Then she waited. The council continued their debate, They discussed logistics, resource allocation, and proper documentation procedures. An hour passed. They formed 3 subcommittees to handle different aspects of the relief effort. They scheduled follow-up meetings. Hana's communicator buzzed. Admiral Sung's message was simple. Fleet mobilizing. Tell them we're coming. She looked at Captain Tay. Sung sending ships. How many? Tay asked. He didn't say. Around them, the council continued their civilized discussion. They were good people, Hana thought. They meant well. They were just being practical, being responsible, making the hard choices that leaders had to make. But humans had a different way of looking at hard choices. Hana raised her hand again. Oralvex, looking slightly annoyed, acknowledged her. Yes, Ambassador? I want to formally notify the Council that Earth is dispatching relief vessels to Velrani Colony 7. That is your right, Oralvex said, though I caution you against making promises your species cannot keep. The Velrani situation requires substantial resources. We understand, Hana said quietly. The meeting continued for another 2 hours. By the time it adjourned, the Council had approved their 12-ship relief convoy. It would launch in 3 days, carrying supplies and evacuation capability for 50,000 people. It was the largest relief effort the Council had mounted in 15 years. They were quite proud of it. Hana returned to her quarters on the station. Her communicator showed 17 new messages from Earth. Ship captains requesting jump coordinates. Logistics officers asking for supply manifests. Admiral Sung sent a final update. Current count, 847 ships and climbing. ETA to Velrani, 6 days. 847 ships. Hana sat down heavily. The Galactic Council thought humans were reckless, emotional, unpredictable. They weren't wrong. Every calculation said this was foolish. Sending that many ships would create gaps in Earth's defenses. It would disrupt trade routes. It would cost enormous amounts of money. But somewhere out there, 340,000 people were watching their air gauges tick down. They were parents and children and workers and dreamers. They were people who had called for help. And humans, Hana thought, did not do small responses. She began drafting her next report to the Council. They were going to be very surprised. Captain Jin was 3 days into hauling grain from Mars to Europa Station when the message came through. His ship, the Seoul Express, was a cargo hauler. It was not fancy. It was not fast. It had one job: move food from one place to another. The distress call from Velrani Colony played on his bridge speakers. Jin listened to the fear in the colonist's voice. He looked at his navigation officer, a young woman named Sora. How far? He asked. Sora pulled up the coordinates. Velrani Colony 7, 4 days at maximum jump. But Captain, we're carrying perishable cargo. Europa Station is expecting this grain. The contract penalties. Calculate the jump, Jin interrupted. Sir, calculate the jump to Velrani. We're going. Sora stared at him. We're a grain hauler. We don't have medical supplies. We don't have rescue equipment. We have 40,000 tons of wheat. Jin was already pulling up the communication system. Wheat is food. People need food. Calculate the jump. Across human space, similar conversations happened on hundreds of ships. Commander Yuna of the science vessel Discovery was mapping a distant nebula when her communications officer burst onto the bridge. Ma'am, there's a colony emergency. Velrani 7. They're asking for help. Yuna looked at her crew. The Discovery was built for research, not rescue. They had laboratories, scanners, and scientific equipment. They did not have passenger quarters or medical bays. How many people? She asked. 340,000, ma'am. Yuna thought about her mission. They were supposed to spend 6 more months studying this nebula. The data would be valuable. The university was expecting results. She thought about 340,000 people watching their air run out. Set course for Velrani, she ordered. We'll figure out the rest on the way. At Terra Station, Fleet Admiral Sung stood in the command center, watching his displays light up with ship registrations. Military vessels, civilian transports, corporate freighters, private yachts, mining ships, colony barges, even a luxury cruise liner. Lieutenant Day, His logistics officer looked like he might cry. Sir, this is chaos. We have no formation plan. Half these ships aren't even military. The cruise liner has a swimming pool, for heaven's sake. Can it carry people? Sung asked. Well, yes, but then it can help. Sung pulled up the master fleet display. More ships appeared every minute. How many now? 1,047, sir, and climbing. Sung nodded. He had expected this. Humans were predictable in their unpredictability. Show them someone in trouble and they would drop everything to help. It was not logical. It was not efficient. It was just how they were built. Sir, Day continued, if we send this many ships, we'll create massive gaps in our defense grid. The outer colonies will be underprotected. Our trade routes will be disrupted. The economic impact alone. I know, Sung said quietly. He knew all of this. He had run the numbers. Sending this fleet was strategically foolish. It left Earth vulnerable. It would cost billions. Other species would see it as weakness or madness. He did not care. Start organizing by ship class, he ordered. Military vessels formed the perimeter group. Hospital ships in the center. Cargo haulers, passenger ships, anyone with cargo space cataloged their capacity. And Day? Yes, sir? Stop trying to make it perfect. Just make it work. On the merchant vessel, Busan Runner, Captain Min received the coordinates and immediately changed course. Her ship carried electronics components. The buyers would be angry. The contracts would be broken. She would probably lose her license. She thought about her daughter, safe on Earth. She thought about 340,000 other daughters and sons and parents running out of air. All hands, prepare for jump, she announced. We're going to Velrani. The Galactic Council's communication networks detected the fleet movement 6 hours after it started. The automated systems flagged it as a possible military mobilization. Warning alerts went out to nearby species. Ambassador Hana received a priority call from Oralvex. Ambassador, our sensors detect significant fleet movement in human space. Over 1,000 vessels converging toward the outer rim. Is Earth launching a military campaign? Hana almost laughed. No, Council Chair. Those ships are heading to Velrani Colony 7. There was a long pause. 1,000 ships? For a relief mission? We don't do things small, Hana replied. Another pause. Ambassador, this is unprecedented. The resource allocation is illogical. You will leave your own territory underdefended. The economic cost will be substantial. Yes, Hana agreed. Then why? Hana thought about how to explain it. How to make someone from an ancient, logical civilization understand the human approach to helping others. Because they called for help, she said finally. That's enough reason for us. The fleet continued to grow. By the end of the first day, 1,200 ships had registered. By the second day, 1,400. They came from everywhere, military bases, commercial ports, mining stations, colony worlds. Admiral Sung stood in front of a map showing the fleet's projected path. It was messy. Ships were traveling at different speeds. The formation looked like a swarm of insects rather than a proper military fleet. Lieutenant Day had stopped complaining about the chaos. Now he just worked, organizing manifests and coordinating jump times. Sir, we have 17 different types of atmospheric processors. None of them use the same power connections. Then we'll adapt them when we get there, Sung said. We have 43 ships that don't have proper landing gear for planetary deployment. They can stay in orbit and shuttle supplies. The cruise liner is requesting permission to bring its entertainment staff to help with refugee morale. Sung smiled. Approved. Anything else? Day shook his head. Sir, how are we going to coordinate all this when we arrive? Sung looked at the map. By every military standard, this fleet was a disaster waiting to happen. Different command structures, different equipment, different training levels, no unified plan. But they all had one thing in common. They all wanted to help. We'll figure it out, Sung said. Humans are good at improvising. On the third day, the fleet began its jump to Velrani space. 1,462 ships from every corner of human civilization. They carried food, water, medical supplies, atmospheric processors, temporary shelters, and hope. The Galactic Council watched in disbelief. No species in recorded history had ever mobilized this much force for charity. It violated every principle of resource management and strategic planning. But Ambassador Hana understood something the Council did not. Humans did not calculate whether helping was profitable. They calculated whether helping was possible. And if it was possible, they did it. The Galactic Council's relief convoy was 3 days into their journey when their sensors detected something impossible. The science officer on the lead vessel stared at her display and ran the diagnostic 3 times. The readings could not be correct. "Commander, I'm detecting a massive fleet translation signature." The Corthan commander looked up from his paperwork. "Impossible. The nearest fleet assembly point is weeks away from Velrani space." "Sir, the signature is coming from inside the Velrani system." The commander rushed to the sensor station. The display showed what looked like a small sun appearing out of nowhere. Hundreds of jump signatures all arriving simultaneously. "How many ships?" "Still counting, sir. Estimate 1,200. No, correction, 1,400. Correction again." The science officer's voice trailed off. "Sir, it's not stopping." In the Velrani Colony 7 Emergency Command Center, Coordinator Hyun had not slept in 4 days. The atmospheric processors were failing faster than predicted. They had 9 days of air left, maybe 10 if they reduced activity to minimum levels. His sensor officer, a young man barely out of training, called out in a shaking voice, "Sir, you need to see this." Hyun dragged himself to the sensor station. The screen looked broken. There were too many contacts. Sensor systems were not designed to track this many objects at once. "It's a malfunction," Hyun said tiredly. "No, sir, I've checked. They're ships. Over 1,000 ships just entered the system." Hyun felt ice in his chest. An invasion force. Pirates. Raiders. He had called for help and instead brought doom to his colony. "Sound the alarm. Prepare for—" "Sir, wait. They're broadcasting." The voice that came through the speakers was human. Hyun recognized the accent from trade videos. "Velrani Colony 7. This is Captain Tae of the Terran Relief Fleet. We have atmospheric processors, medical facilities, evacuation capacity, and supplies. Where do you need us?" Hyun stared at the sensor display. The fleet was spreading out across the system. Ships of every size and type. Military vessels, cargo haulers, passenger liners. They moved like a school of fish, disorganized, but somehow coordinated. "Relief fleet?" Hyun whispered. "All of them?" His communications officer nodded, speechless. Hyun opened the channel. His voice cracked when he spoke. "This is Coordinator Hyun of Velrani Colony 7. How many refugees can you take?" There was a pause. Then Captain Tae's voice came back, gentle and calm. "All of them. We can take all of them if needed." Hyun sat down heavily. In galactic history, relief missions were calculated affairs. A few ships, limited capacity, priority personnel only. No one sent a fleet like this. No one. "Why?" he asked. "We have no treaty with Earth, no trade agreements. We're nobody." Another pause. "You called for help," Captain Tae said. "That's enough." The fleet descended on Velrani like a swarm. To any military observer, it looked like chaos. Ships arrived in no particular order. The cruise liner Golden Star parked itself in orbit next to the destroyer Incheon. Cargo haulers mixed with science vessels. Mining ships bracketed medical frigates. But the chaos had purpose. Commander Kwan of the Incheon took one look at the situation and started directing traffic. His military training told him this was a disaster. Ships were arriving too fast. There was no coordination. Someone was going to crash. "All vessels, this is the Incheon," he broadcast. "Form holding patterns by ship class. Military vessels, establish orbital perimeter. Cargo ships, prepare for landing assignments. Medical vessels, coordinate with Colony Hospital. Everyone else, wait for instructions." Slowly, patterns emerged from the chaos. The military ships spread out, not for defense but for space traffic control. The real danger was not invasion, but collision. On the surface, Engineer Ara stood on the landing pad, watching ship after ship descend. She was supposed to be coordinating the atmospheric processor installation. She had expected maybe 5 ships, maybe 10 at most. Instead, she watched 40 ships land in the first hour alone. A cargo hauler touched down near her position, the Seoul Express. Its captain, a man named Jin, walked down the ramp. "I have 40,000 tons of grain," he called out. "Where do you want it?" Ara blinked. "Grain? People need food, right? I brought food." Another ship landed. The Discovery, a science vessel. Commander Yuna emerged with her crew. "We have laboratory space and clean rooms. Can we use them as temporary medical facilities?" I suppose so," Ara said. A third ship, a fourth, a 10th. Each captain asked the same question. "What do you need?" Ara realized something. The humans had not waited to plan. They had not organized a coordinated response. Each ship had just grabbed whatever they had and come. It was crazy. It was inefficient. It was working. She pulled out her communicator and called Coordinator Hyun. "Sir, I need authority to start organizing these ships. We have resources arriving faster than I can process." "Do whatever you need to do," Hyun replied. "I'm dealing with the orbital situation. 17 ships want to donate their medical facilities. 3 are trying to give us their entire cargo of water. And someone just offered to convert a luxury cruise liner into temporary housing." On the Golden Star, the entertainment director stood with her staff. They had transformed the grand ballroom into a refugee center. The casino was now a children's playroom. The spa had become a medical triage area. "Is this really okay?" one of the staff asked. "Using a cruise ship for refugees?" The director smiled. "We're designed to make people comfortable and happy. These people need comfort and happiness. Same job, different context." Dr. Mina was converting the grain hauler's cargo bay into a hospital. It made no sense. Grain haulers were not designed for medical work. The temperature controls were wrong. The air filtration was minimal. The lighting was terrible. She worked anyway. 6 hours later, she had a functioning emergency medical center. It violated every health regulation in the Galactic Medical Code. It also saved 200 lives in the first 12 hours. Captain Tay moved between ships, coordinating, suggesting, solving problems. He had no authority over most of these vessels. Half of them were civilian. But they listened anyway because everyone shared the same goal. Ambassador Hana arrived on a military transport with Admiral Sung. They stood on the colony landing pad, watching the organized chaos around them. Ships landing and taking off, supplies moving in every direction, engineers arguing about power connections while simultaneously fixing the problem. Admiral Sung shook his head in wonder. "This is the most beautiful disaster I've ever seen." "It's working, though," Hana said. "It shouldn't. By every military standard, this is chaos. Maybe chaos is underrated." The Galactic Council observers arrived on the 3rd day. They expected to find confusion and failure. They expected to document why relief missions needed proper planning and organization. Instead, they found 340,000 colonists breathing clean air from 43 different types of atmospheric processors, all adapted to work together by human engineers who had simply decided that incompatible equipment was a challenge, not an impossibility. They found hospitals in grain haulers, refugee centers in cruise ships, and command centers in mining vessels. They found chaos that somehow worked. And they found humans who had traveled hundreds of light years, disrupted their entire economy, and left their homes undefended, all because someone they had never met called for help. Council Chair Oralvex stood in the observation deck of his ship, watching the human relief operation unfold below. He had seen many things in his 300 years of life. He had witnessed wars, peace treaties, and the rise and fall of civilizations. He had never seen anything like this. "This is not how it should work," he said quietly. His aide, a younger Thessian named Ven, looked up from her datapad. "Sir? Look at them." Oralvex gestured at the planet below. No planning, no coordination, ships from dozens of different organizations all working independently. By every standard we have, this should be failing. But it's not failing, sir. No, Orlvex agreed. It is not. He watched a cargo vessel land near a military destroyer. The cargo ship's captain walked over to the military officers, and they started talking. Within minutes, they were unloading supplies together. No formal agreements, no paperwork, just two groups of humans who saw work that needed doing. Run the numbers again, Orlvex ordered. How much has this cost the humans? Ven consulted her pad. Estimated economic impact, 200 billion credits. Defense capability reduced by 15%. Trade route disruptions affecting at least 30 commercial agreements. Supply chain interruptions that will take months to recover. For strangers, Orlvex said, they have done all this for people they never met. On the surface, engineer Ara had given up trying to make things work properly. Instead, she was making things work anyway. The atmospheric processors should not function together. They had different power requirements, different chemical processes, different output rates. She had 17 different systems jury-rigged into a single network held together by adapter cables, custom-built converters, and what one human engineer called creative problem-solving. A Galactic Council observer approached her. He was Mindari, a species known for logical thinking and precise engineering. This system is inefficient, the observer said, studying the tangle of connections. The power conversion alone wastes 30% of energy. The flow rates are mismatched. And this connection here, he pointed at a junction that was literally held together with metal tape. This violates 6 different safety codes. Ara looked at him tiredly. She had not slept in 50 hours. Does it produce breathable air? Well, yes, but then it works. She moved to the next processor. You can file a complaint about the efficiency after everyone is breathing. The observer followed her. You don't understand. This is not how engineering should be done. There should be planning, proper equipment, standardized connections. We didn't have time for should, Ara interrupted. We had what we had, and we made it work. That's engineering too. Dr. Mina was dealing with her own critics. A Korthan medical officer stood in her improvised hospital, looking horrified. This is a grain storage bay, the Korthan said. You cannot perform medical procedures in a grain storage bay. The contamination risk alone. I've established sterile fields, Mina replied, checking a patient's vital signs. Air filtration is running at maximum. All surfaces have been sterilized. But the regulations were written for ideal conditions, Mina said. This is not ideal. This is making do with what we have. And it works. I've treated 800 patients here. It's improper. Mina looked at the Korthan officer. You know what's improper? Letting people die because you don't have the perfect equipment. We save lives with what we have, not what we wish we had. Admiral Sung was in a meeting with Coordinator Hyun and several Galactic Council observers. They were reviewing the relief operations progress. You have exceeded all projections, Hyun said. His eyes were red from exhaustion, but he was smiling. The atmospheric situation is stable. Medical cases are being treated. We have enough food and water for months. I don't know how to thank you. No thanks needed, Sung replied. This is what neighbors do. Orlvex spoke up. But you are not neighbors. The Velrani colony is over 400 light-years from Earth. You have no political alliance. No trade agreements. No strategic value. Admiral, I must ask, why did your species commit such enormous resources to this effort? Sung considered the question. He knew what Orlvex was really asking. Why did humans do things that made no logical sense? Council Chair, can I tell you a story from Earth's history? Orlvex nodded. 300 years ago, a major earthquake hit a coastal city on Earth. Thousands died. Thousands more were trapped in collapsed buildings. And do you know what happened? People came from all over the planet to help. Rescue workers, doctors, engineers, just regular people with shovels. They came because people needed help. That is understandable, Orlvex said. They were your own species. Let me tell you another story. 100 years ago, a space station in the asteroid belt had a catastrophic failure. It was a corporate mining station. The workers were from 20 different countries. No government wanted to pay for the rescue because the workers were not their citizens. Do you know what happened? Sung smiled. 500 private ships showed up. Regular people who owned their own vessels, taxi pilots, cargo haulers, rich people with yachts. They organized themselves and rescued everyone. Why? Oralvex asked. Because someone needed help. That's the only reason humans need. Oralvex was silent for a long moment. This is not efficient. No, Sung agreed. It is not logical. No. It leaves you vulnerable. Yes. Then why do it? Sung looked at the Thessian. Because we're human. We don't calculate whether helping is worth the cost. We calculate whether we can help. If we can, we do. It's not logical. It's not efficient. But it's who we are. Ambassador Hana was giving a tour to several council observers. They walked through the temporary refugee center set up in the Golden Stars ballroom. Children were playing games supervised by the cruise ship's entertainment staff. Families were eating meals prepared by the ship's chefs. Medical staff moved between groups, checking on everyone's health. This is a luxury cruise liner, one observer said. Why is it being used for refugees? Because it has space and facilities, Hana replied. The company donated the ship's use for the relief effort. Donated? They will lose enormous revenue. Yes. Why would they do that? Hana smiled. Because the CEO's daughter asked him to. She saw the news about Velrani and asked what their company was doing to help. So he sent the ship. The observer looked confused. A business decision made because of a child's question? Humans don't separate business from compassion as neatly as other species, Hana explained. We're messy that way. On the 5th day, the Galactic Council's original relief convoy arrived at Velrani. Their 12 ships carried proper equipment, trained personnel, and carefully planned resources. They found the crisis already over. The human fleet had stabilized the atmosphere, treated all medical emergencies, and established supply lines that would last for months. The convoy commander contacted Coordinator Hyun. We have arrived with relief supplies. Hyun looked at his screens, showing the hundreds of human ships in orbit and on the ground. Thank you, Commander. We appreciate the Council's support, though I think we have most immediate needs covered. I see that. The commander sounded bemused. The humans have been thorough. They've been incredible, Hyun said softly. Oralvex called Ambassador Hana for a final meeting before the Council observers departed. They met in a conference room on the colony's surface. Ambassador, I have reviewed the complete operation, Oralvex said. Your species has committed resources equivalent to… Well, the calculation is difficult. The economic impact is staggering. You've disrupted trade routes, weakened your defensive positions, and spent enough credits to build multiple space stations. For strangers. Yes, Hana said simply. The Council's approach was more measured. 12 ships, 50,000 evacuees. Minimal disruption to our own systems. I know. And yet, Oralvex continued, your approach saved everyone. Our approach would have saved some and let the rest die. Your chaos worked better than our order. Hana waited. She could see Oralvex struggling with something. I do not understand humans, the Council Chair admitted. You are inefficient, you are emotional, you make decisions that defy logic, and somehow you achieve results that we, with all our planning and calculations, cannot match. We have a saying on Earth, Hana said. We don't do small aid packages. When we help, we help. Oralvex was quiet for a moment. This has been educational, Ambassador. Disturbing, but educational. 3 weeks after the human fleet arrived at Velrani Colony 7, the last ships prepared to depart. The colony was not just repaired. It was better than before. Coordinator Hyun stood on the landing pad watching the Seoul Express lift off. Captain Jin had stayed an extra week to help install the new atmospheric systems. The grain he brought had fed the entire colony during the crisis. I still don't understand why they came, Hyun said to his assistant. Does it matter? The assistant replied. They saved us. It matters because I want to understand them. Every other species in the galaxy would have done the calculation. 50,000 lives versus 300,000. They would have saved who they could and called it tragic but necessary. But humans? They saw 300,000 people and decided to save all of us. Engineer Ara approached them. She looked exhausted but happy. The last of the atmospheric network is running smoothly. We have redundancy built in now. If one system fails, 3 others can compensate. Built from 17 different types of processors that were never meant to work together, Hyun said, shaking his head. How is that even possible? Ara smiled. Human engineering. When we don't have the right tools, we make the wrong tools work anyway. In orbit, the human fleet was organizing for departure. The process was just as chaotic as their arrival. Ships left in small groups, no formal organization, just captains saying goodbye and jumping away. Admiral Sung stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the fleet dissolve. Lieutenant Day was tallying the final costs. Sir, final economic assessment is in. We spent 240 billion credits. We have 63 trade agreement violations to resolve. Our supply chains will need 3 months to fully recover, and our defense grid will be operating at reduced capacity for at least 6 weeks. Worth it? Sung asked. Day looked up from his pad and smiled. 340,000 people are alive who would be dead. Yes, sir, it was worth it. On the Galactic Council station, the full council had assembled for an emergency session. The topic: the human relief operation at Velrani Colony 7. Ambassador Hana sat in the human section, waiting. She knew this could go badly. The council could condemn Earth's actions. They could claim humans had violated some obscure regulation. They could punish Earth for showing them up. Oralvex called the session to order. We are here to discuss the Terran response to the Velrani crisis. The Council has reviewed all reports. We have analyzed the operation from every angle. Here it comes, Hana thought. The human response was unprecedented, Oralvex continued. It violated every principle of measured response. It was inefficient, poorly coordinated, and strategically foolish. By every calculation, it should have failed. Hana braced herself. It did not fail, Oralvex said. Instead, it succeeded beyond any relief operation in recorded galactic history. 340,000 lives saved. 0 casualties. Complete infrastructure restoration. And all accomplished in 3 weeks. The council chamber was silent. The council must acknowledge that perhaps our methods are not the only way. Perhaps efficiency is not always the highest virtue. Perhaps there is wisdom in the human approach that we have failed to see. Hana realized she was holding her breath. Therefore, Oralvex announced, the Galactic Council formally recognizes and commends Earth for its relief efforts at Velrani Colony 7. We acknowledge that humans have demonstrated a capacity for humanitarian aid that exceeds all previous standards. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some species applauded. Others looked uncomfortable. All of them looked at the human section differently than before. After the session, Oralvex approached Hana privately. This changes things, Ambassador, he said quietly. How so? For thousands of years, the Council has operated on principles of logic and calculation. We help when it is practical. We save who we can save. We make the hard choices. He paused. We thought this was civilization. But you humans have shown us something else. You've shown us that maybe the hard choice is not always the right choice. We just did what felt right, Hana said. That is what disturbs me most, Oralvex replied. You did not calculate. You did not debate. You simply acted, and your actions saved more lives than our careful planning would have. 2 months later, Ambassador Hana stood in her office reviewing incoming messages. Her assistant brought her the daily summary. We have 47 new requests, the assistant said. Requests for what? Mutual aid agreements, trade partnerships, defense pacts, all from minor species. Hana looked at the list. Small colonies, distant outposts, species with little political power or economic value, the ones the Galactic Council usually ignored. They all reference Velrani, the assistant continued. They all want Earth as an ally because they know that if something happens to them, we'll actually come. Lieutenant Day from Admiral Sung's staff called later that day. Ambassador, we can't possibly respond to all these requests the way we responded to Velrani. Our fleet can't sustain that level of deployment. I know, Hana said. But we have to do something. What do you suggest? Hana thought about it. The humans had shown the galaxy a different way to help. Now they needed to teach others how to do the same. We teach them, she said. We teach them the human method of helping each other. Small species working together. Mutual aid networks. When one colony has trouble, the others help. They don't wait for the council to approve a measured response. They just go. That's actually brilliant, Day said. On Velrani Colony 7, Coordinator Hyun received a message from a small mining colony 3 systems away. They were having equipment failures. Not a crisis yet, but it could become one. Hyun looked at his chief engineer. How fast can we get a repair team together? Sir, we're not a relief organization. We barely got back on our feet ourselves. The humans sent over 1,000 ships to help us, Hyun said. This colony needs 6 engineers and some spare parts. I think we can manage that. The engineer smiled. I'll start organizing a team. The message Hyun sent back to the mining colony was simple. We're coming. Expect arrival in 2 days. Because that's what the humans had taught them. When someone calls for help, you don't calculate whether it's worth it. You calculate whether you can help. If you can, you do. 6 months after Velrani, the Galactic Council noticed something strange. Small species were forming aid networks. When one colony had trouble, others responded quickly. Not with the Council's measured approach, but with the human method. Send what you have, send it fast, figure out the details later. It was messy. It was inefficient. It worked. Oralvex called Hana to his office. What have you done, Ambassador? We taught them to help each other, Hana replied. You've destabilized thousands of years of proper relief protocols. Have we? Or have we just shown everyone that there's another way? Oralvex was quiet for a long moment. The Council's way saved some, and let others die. Your way saves everyone. I cannot decide if you are brilliant or insane. Maybe both, Hana said with a smile. The other species call you savages, you know. They say humans are too emotional, too reckless. They say you don't think before you act. They're not wrong. No, Oralvex agreed. But perhaps savagery, as they call it, is sometimes better than civilization. Perhaps caring more about people than procedures is not weakness but strength. Hana stood to leave. At the door, she turned back. Council Chair, humans have a saying, go big or go home. We don't do small aid packages. We don't send 12 ships when we can send 1,200. We don't save 50,000 when we can save 300,000. Why? Oralvex asked. Why is it always all or nothing with your species? Because every life matters, Hana said simply. Not just the important ones. Not just the ones we can easily save. All of them. That's not savage. That's human. A year after Velrani, Admiral Sung sat in his office reading reports. The Velrani operation had cost Earth enormously. They were still recovering economically. Their trade routes were still being repaired. But 47 minor species now had mutual aid agreements with Earth. Hundreds of colonies had formed their own aid networks, inspired by what they saw humans do. And most importantly, 340,000 people on Velrani Colony 7 were alive and breathing. Lieutenant Day knocked on his door. Sir, we have another distress call. Small colony, environmental system failure. They're asking if Earth can help. Sung smiled. How many ships do we have in range? Because that was always the question. Not whether helping was worth it, not whether they could afford it, just whether they could help. And if they could, they would. That's what savages do. They don't calculate aid. They send fleets. The Galactic Council learned something from humanity that year. Civilization is not measured by how logically you make decisions. It's measured by how many people you save when they call for help. And by that measure, the savage humans were the most civilized species in the galaxy.